So my name is Keith Liu. I'm the open source lead at Microsoft. Let me give you some background. I was never really a fan of Microsoft. For the first 15 years of my career, I was a Bible-thumping, card-carrying member of the open source community. And I was, everything Linux, everything open source. And so when 5 years ago, Microsoft gave me a call and they said, Keith, would you like to come and join Microsoft and help us with our open source business? And I was like, what business, right? And but I said that, my good Canadian Chinese upbringing suggests you should never turn down a free lunch. And so I went, and I was quite surprised. I was blown away, really, by the open source talent at Microsoft. And I don't know about you, but I think the open source community typically, there's a lot of people we look up to, a lot of people we respect for the things that they do in the open source space. And when I went and I saw what was at Microsoft, I was completely blown away. And at that point, I met a couple of folks who I had as idols. You may have known Nick Arkusha, who is one of the open government and open data and open source leads globally. Frederick Harper, who is actually from Montreal, was actually on the open source team in Canada. So meeting some of these people made me realize, well, okay, Microsoft is actually serious about open source. And that's when I joined, and then I was making sure that we helped build the open source community within Microsoft and also within Canada. And then after that, I was the strategy lead for open source at Microsoft. And then now I own the business of open source within Canada. So everything open source related in Canada, whether it's the marketing, the strategy, the partnerships that we do, which is why we work so close with Red Hat, but also making sure that our customers who are using open source or interop environments have the best experience possible. Because as we know, a very big portion of our customers, I thought something like 80 or 90% of our customers are probably using open source. And so we want to make sure that they're well taken care of. So I guess what I was getting to, this is a very different relationship that Microsoft has with the open source space. Because the world has changed. It really has. And it's really refreshing to be a part of this change at Microsoft. But it wasn't overnight. It's been the past 12 years. Our team has existed for quite a long time. What is really cool is that now that I've been outside of Microsoft and now within Microsoft, I really see that the company is really about empowerment, right? They really believe in empowering every person in the organization to achieve more. And I know it sounds like one of those mantras that nobody believes in, but at Microsoft, that's really what we do. It's actually really, really cool. And the part that we want to focus on today is building an intelligent cloud. Microsoft has 3 core businesses. Building an intelligent cloud is what my team is a part of. Right? And that's part of the foundation with a partnership with Red Hat. So I'm going to test my French here, but il n'y a aucune raison pour laquelle Microsoft ne peut être l'entreprise logicielle la plus ouverte au monde. How's that? Thank you. So let me tell you this story. So this is Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. And about a month and a half after he joined, he pulled all of his leadership globally, and we all got into a room in Redmond. And this was one of the statements that he said. Right? There is no reason Microsoft cannot be one of the most open software companies in the world. And this wasn't marketing, right? These were his leadership team, all locked up in a room. And for someone who worked on the open source team, I was really giddy and running around and calling my mom. But that was really, really, really awesome. And so coming down from Microsoft, you must have seen the change over the past couple of years, right? And there's a lot of momentum. And even today, I'm sure if you check the news, if you look up Microsoft and open source, you're probably going to find 3, 5, 10 new articles today about Microsoft and open source. But the most interesting one, and don't quote me on this one, Zednet said this, but this is not your dad's Microsoft anymore. And that's really, really cool. Now, in terms of momentum, this year we made quite a few announcements, right? From Eclipse, Hadoop available on Azure, of course the Red Hat partnership in November, SQL Server working on Linux, and of course most recently the Bash shell on Windows. Those are all pretty exciting from a technology perspective. That's really, really cool. But there's 2 things on this slide that get me really excited. The first is in November last year, I presented at a conference called S2LQ. In Quebec City, and it's about open source. And at that point, that was the first time we revealed globally that 1 out of every 4 VMs on Azure were Linux. First time we revealed that number. Pretty cool. That's November. I'm excited to tell you today, and I don't think this number is public, so no social media, but 1 out of every 3 servers now on Azure are Linux. And that's a matter of, what, 6 months? Pretty good growth for the company that made Windows, right? And then finally, the part that's why there's a red circle thing there, it's all about the people. So previously, Microsoft had an entire subsidiary, so imagine the amount of employees we have in Canada, but an entire subsidiary of just open source people, and we called it MS Open Tech. Since then, we've actually integrated that into all of Microsoft, because we believe that open source should be a part of every part of our business. But the proof is in the pudding. So some of you might know the Apache Foundation. Well, the president of the Apache Foundation is actually a Microsoft employee. And most recently, Wim Kokarts, Mr. Linux from Oracle, actually joined our team as well. So these are people who really, truly believe in open source and are really strong in the open source space. And it's really a privilege to work with them. And that, to me, shows Microsoft's commitment to openness. But if we're going to talk about openness, we have to talk about our cloud, which is why we're here today. Some of you might be familiar with Azure, and I'm going to go over very quickly some of the key talking points about Azure, really what you should know, right? And about Azure, I think everyone thinks Microsoft's synonymous with enterprise. If there's one thing we do really well, it's enterprise, right? So Azure, our cloud, absolutely extends that space. But the one that most people aren't very familiar with is the hyperscale. As we know, there are several hyperscale clouds in the world. I apologize for the text. I think, anyway, I'll explain the text. Azure has 24 data center regions globally. Now, if some of you use different clouds, you know they like to use the term regions. But what does that really mean? We actually have the largest global footprint for a cloud. If you add Google and AWS combined, it's still not as big as Microsoft's cloud, which is pretty phenomenal. And that number is growing. So currently there's 24 regions, and as you know, we made a pretty big announcement on May 10th of this year. May 10th of this year, because Canada now has 2 data centers from Microsoft, and they went live on May 10. One's located in Toronto, and one's located in Quebec City. And all of you are in the tech space, so you know this as much as anyone. There is no technical reason for us to build a cloud, a data center in Canada. We have quite a few in the US. But the reason we did this was because a lot of our customers kept on asking for it. And of course we listened. And so we opened 2 data centers in Canada, because data residency for Canadian companies is very important. And now we have it. And the reception has been phenomenal. And so if you haven't given it a try, you absolutely should. My favorite slide, of course, is about Azure's openness, right? Flexibility, choice. Now, I think we have come to expect any cloud platform that we pick has to support any software, has to support every database, has to support any platform. I think that's kind of obvious. It needs to do that. So don't look at these as check marks, because that's not the way my team works. When we build partnerships, we build real solid partnerships. And we'll talk more about this later on when I'm talking about the partnership with Red Hat. But we meet at the minimum once a week, not just from a strategy perspective. Actually, we never talk marketing. It's all about how we can better serve engineering and making sure our customers are doing better, at least once a week in Canada. But globally, we probably meet every single day, depending on the different teams. But that's just one of our partners. This goes for all of our technologies that we support. And that's how serious we take openness and choice. But in terms of flexibility and choice, Red Hat's partnership is really critical to us, and that's why it's really awesome that, as you know, they recently acquired Ansible. And so our support and our partnership has gotten even stronger. And it's not on this slide, but of course we also support OpenShift. Works really well with Azure. So this is supposed to be a list of technologies that we support, and there's a whole bunch. And what's really critical is that on each one of these technologies, we have engineers who are contributors to their code. And my favorite example is PHP. Some of you might know Pierre Joie. He's a good friend of mine. He's from France. I think Jonathan also knows him as well. Right? Pierre Joie is one of the top contributors to PHP in the world, very well known in that space. Right? Top 5, I believe they're ranked. He's a Microsoft employee. And this goes for all of our technologies, because that's what we want. We don't just want checkboxes. We want to make sure we contribute and we understand the technology really, really well. And as I mentioned, 1 in 3 VMs on Azure today run Linux. And of course, today we're also talking a lot about hybrid cloud. Now, according to industry analysts, Azure enables the best hybrid clouds, especially with Red Hat's OpenStack. Managed by CloudForms, we can make your hybrid cloud dreams come true, which is pretty awesome. Now, a lot of you probably aren't familiar with Azure, so you can continue using the tools that you use and love already to deploy your applications into the cloud. Simple, no retraining, nothing necessary. And lastly, your business has probably invested quite a bit into different line of business applications already. And our teams have worked very hard to ensure that Azure plays really well with those applications. But probably the most demanded feature about any cloud platform is trustworthiness. And our cloud is more compliant and has more certifications than any other cloud in the world. And we were the first to become ISO cloud certified. That new cloud standard, we make sure that our cloud is always there getting every certification, because trustworthiness in the cloud is critical for business. So there's a lot of momentum, and I can throw numbers at you all day long. But my favorite one that I showed you before is that we went from 1/4 being Linux to 1/3 being Linux on Azure. 1 out of every 3 VMs on Azure are Linux-based. And this is growing by 90,000 new Azure subscriptions every single month. What I'm trying to say is I think it's probably going to be more open source than Windows very, very shortly. But don't quote me on that one. I asked you a loaded question before. How many of you are actually Microsoft customers? We already know. But the reality is over 80% of our customers, or Fortune 500 companies, are now using our cloud. And a lot of the Canadian companies as well. Ultimately, my story for you today regarding Microsoft's openness and Microsoft's cloud is that we'll walk with you through your journey to build the intelligent cloud, to leverage the Linux value that you've already invested, leverage the open source DevOps that you already have, using the tools that you know and you love to help you build hyperscale at hyperspeed. But don't take my word for it. If we're going to show examples like it, you can go to Microsoft.com/open source, and you'll find stories and stories and stories of all kinds of organizations that have used our cloud and that have worked with Microsoft through open source, et cetera, et cetera. I usually love to talk about Throwback Entertainment. Some of you may know them. Throwback Entertainment is a gaming company based out of Ontario. They acquired Acclaim's $3.5 billion gaming asset portfolio and relaunching them as a new platform for mobile and for gaming consoles. But what's really awesome is that they're fully open source and fully Azure. But today we're here to talk about Red Hat and Microsoft. And I think it's a bit of a surprise for a lot of people. I think even at lunchtime when someone asked, "You're from Microsoft?" And it's kind of like, what are you doing here? I guess not everybody knows about the partnership, but that is probably the most exciting and important partnership for a cloud that I can think of. Red Hat and Microsoft. And we truly believe we're stronger together. Because 91% of you will be going to hybrid cloud by next year. This we know. And so what we want to do is focus on what do customers want, and we asked, right? So customers asked us, they want more choice, they want better support, they want portability. Portability is key. The ability to manage their hybrid cloud, that is critical. And finally, confidence in the cloud that they choose. And so we took the feedback from our customers, and we built our partnership on these pillars. And if there's anything you remember from me today and you forget everything, the most important thing you should remember about Microsoft and Red Hat's partnership is this. We have 5 pillars. The most important one is our joint support. This does not exist anywhere else, and let me explain. We actually have engineers, Red Hat and Microsoft, sitting in the same room in Redmond. So that regardless if you have an Azure issue or a Red Hat issue, and no matter who you call, you're brought to the same team. Because our customers told us they value enterprise support. And that's the key of our partnership. And of course, this can all be managed with CloudForms. OpenShift works really well. And this is certified on Red Hat's cloud program. But most importantly, the closeness of our partnership, how much we work together, that's why this partnership is important. And all of it is available today, minus that one there, which is having .NET available on Red Hat. That's the only piece, and I've been told very recently that our teams are working furiously to ensure that that happens ASAP. But as I mentioned before, these aren't checkboxes, right? Our teams work very close, and that's why we're able to push all of this technology today. And to that point, anything Red Hat products will work on Azure, but also, of course, Windows will be supported on Red Hat OpenStack, which is pretty cool. So, there wouldn't be a Microsoft presentation if I didn't give you calls to action. So here they are. Do yourself a favor. Actually, I'm curious, a lot of you are Microsoft customers. Have any of you been to a Microsoft Technology Center before, MTC? Anyone? Wow, 2 of you. Do yourself a favor. Check out the MTC. And it's not because it's really, really cool and there's about $30 million of technology in one floor, but it's some of the best technology in the world, server, cloud, everything, but also some of the top architects all sitting on one floor. And we have that in Canada, the Microsoft Technology Center. But what we do is we bring you in for what we call an immersion experience so that your teams can bring their issues, their challenges, but also their projects. And our architects will work with you from a technology perspective to ensure that everything works well. And that's called an immersion experience. And whether you reach out to Red Hat or Microsoft, we'll be able to set something up for you. But while doing that, also set yourself up with an Azure session, or what we call an Azure assessment session, so that you have a deeper dive. What I've given you today is very high level. Right? Azure's open, Azure's flexible, but you want to learn more, that's what you should do. And lastly, sign up for an open source on Azure webinar. There are many of them online. And the last one is this, contact me. My name is Keith Liu, LOO, and this is why it's going to be important. I'm going to make you an offer that I have not done before. This is the first time. So if you reach out to me by today, my team will sponsor up to $10,000 in consulting for one of these Azure assessments. So what we'll do is we'll go find a partner, there's some in this room, who we'll bring in and who will do an assessment for your business for your hybrid cloud. And they'll give you a roadmap and all the different things you need to know and give you the training that you need. At the end, they'll come back with a report, and it's all yours, and it will be for free. If you contact me today, I'll set you up with one of these. It's never been offered before. Keith Liu, LOO. And I'll leave this slide with the Red Hat team, and hopefully it will be a PowerPoint slide and not a PDF, because there's a lot of useful information on it. But there's a lot more links that you can go to from Red Hat and Microsoft to learn more. And lastly, really thank you. And it's not just a thank you as in thank you for letting me present, but thank you for the opportunity to partner with Red Hat. It's really been a phenomenal relationship that we've had. This partnership, I'm a lot older than I look, but we've been in this business for a long time, and from what I've seen, this is one of the strongest partnerships I've seen in the tech space. And that's really, really cool, and it's only going to get better. And we truly believe when building cloud, it's better together with Red Hat and Microsoft. Thank you very much.